Wrestling has had a long and storied history in the realm of fighting. The very first Olympics sometime around 776 AD in Greece featured wrestling. Similarly, wrestling has a special place in mixed martial arts lore, and any list of top wrestlers in UFC history has to feature Daniel Cormier somewhere. You could argue where he belongs in the top 5, but not really if he does. The UFC has gone through many different phases since its inception. The early days dominated by the sight of smaller men like Royce Gracie, manhandling much bigger men. To see the 180-pound Gracie dominate men far bigger and more athletic was to wake up to the true potential of mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. In the early to mid-2000s, it was Anderson Silva's nasty clinch work and Muay Thai savagery and Chuck Liddell's particular brand of stand-up carnage that stood out and brought MMA to the masses. Ever present during all of these phases has been the steadiness and recently dominance of wrestlers in the UFC. MMA is exactly that, mixed martial arts. But increasingly, it's the elite wrestlers that are making up most of the champs and top 5 in each division. Enter Daniel Cormier.
In the sport of wrestling, it means everything to me. Gave me an education, allowed me to get the greatest foundation for fighting that can ever be. So it's just the best sport in the world, and it's definitely been the best sport for me.
Daniel Cormier was born on March 20, 1979 in Lafayette, Louisiana. Cormier was an outstanding athlete all through high school, even turning down a football scholarship to LSU to pursue wrestling. His wrestling pedigree is exemplary. He's a 2-time Pan American champion, a 6-time U.S. World or Olympic team member, a bronze medalist at the 2007 World Championships in Baku. He came in 4th at the 2004 Olympic Games and was team captain of the 2008 U.S. Olympic wrestling team. Perhaps most impressively, he's one of very few Americans to have won gold at the Golden Grand-Prix Ivan Yurygin in Russia, considered by many as the most challenging wrestling tournament in the world. In 2008, Cormier decided to pursue MMA, joining American Kickboxing Academy in a typically shrewd move to improve his striking and overall MMA game. Not every specialist who's decided to pursue MMA has been successful. For every Cormier and early Ronda Rousey, judo, there are countless others whose one-dimensional approach to a multi-dimensional discipline has left them stuck as nearly men or women, or just plain stuck. Crucially, it seems to be the elite wrestlers who are able to transcend into the upper echelons of MMA more than any other single discipline. For unequivocal proof of this, one needs look no further than a certain Ben Askren, who was able to get pretty close to the top of the MMA ladder while having close to zero stand-up game to speak of, and an incredibly heavy wrestling attack. So what made Daniel Cormier so successful? Thanks for watching this far. Please help support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. We appreciate you. Before Cormier joined the UFC, he was a huge success in multiple organizations, becoming champion in Extreme MMA and later becoming heavyweight Grand Prix champion in the much-beloved Strikeforce. In the UFC, Cormier was able to become both the light heavyweight and heavyweight champion, only the second man after Conor McGregor to do so. It would be relevant at this point to mention Cormier's size and physique. Cormier is 5 foot 11 inches tall, which is short for a heavyweight, some would say short for a middleweight, and has a 72-inch reach, which again, while not being alarming, is far inferior to most heavyweights. Cormier's often mocked physique is also worth noting, muscular, but not, shall we say, shredded. Despite these apparent disadvantages, Cormier was able to rise to the peak of not 1, but 3 major MMA promotions on the back of elite wrestling, underrated stand-up, and an absolutely unbreakable winning mindset. Cormier's MMA greatness is assured. He may even have an argument to be on the Mount Rushmore of MMA, or at the very least close to it. However, Cormier has 2 notable asterisks next to his name which have arguably come to define him more than his accomplishments. Those asterisks are the only 2 men to have gotten the better of him, Stipe Miocic and Jon Jones. Despite making his UFC debut at heavyweight, Cormier moved down to light heavyweight as he didn't want to face the champion, his friend and training partner Cain Velasquez. It has since emerged that this was also because Cormier knew he was unlikely to be able to beat him.
There's no way I would ever fight him. And this is his division, so if I become the heavyweight champion and he wins a comeback fight and he's in line for a title shot, he'll fight somebody else. Won't fight Luke, won't fight Cain. I'd rather be beltless than fight either one of them.
The then undefeated Cormier tore through the light heavyweight division, ending up at 15-0 as an MMA fighter across all his fights up until that point. A showdown with light heavyweight champ Jon Jones was as inevitable as it was bad-blooded. On January 23, 2015, the pair finally met, and Jones handed DC his first MMA loss in an absorbing and fairly one-sided affair. Their rivalry was heightened by the fact that Jones tested positive on January 6th for a metabolite of cocaine, which, although not on the list of banned substances for competition, gave the impression of a fighter not taking things as seriously as the relatively straight-laced Cormier. For the later rematch, Jones would play off this sequence of events.
I beat you after a weekend of cocaine.
And prostitutes. Wait. I thought that first.
After several postponements due to Jones' doping violations and bans, the pair met again in the long-awaited rematch at UFC 214 in July of 2017. This time, Jones knocked Cormier out by a head kick and punches, and although Jones was later suspended again for failing a drug test, there was the feeling that the more athletically and extravagantly gifted Jones was a mountain too high for Cormier. Cormier was reinstated as light heavyweight champ after Jones' ban, and defended it once more before vacating the belt and announcing he would be moving up to face heavyweight champ Stipe Miocic. A heavy underdog in the fight, Cormier was able to shock the world with a first-round KO of the bigger champ, and become just the second champ in UFC history. Legend status cemented. The facts of the fight don't tell the whole story, however, as Miocic and most onlookers noted that Cormier had benefited from a number of debilitating and illegal eye pokes, sufficient for Miocic to require extensive retina surgery and time away from the octagon. The stage was set for another rematch, and this time at UFC 241, Miocic got the better of Cormier despite a very strong opening 4 rounds from the champ. In the 4th round, Miocic adjusted and started attacking Cormier's body with vicious hooks and broke Cormier.
Oh no, I think ultimately what we're dealing with was a guy who's a spectacular wrestler but really isn't a heavyweight and has had amazing success at heavyweight just because of his skill and his tenacity and his overall ability.
In some ways, Cormier Miocic 2 serves as Cormier's MMA career in a microcosm. A blistering start, surprisingly effective stand-up, only to come undone at the very last in the face of truly world-class opposition. Perhaps this is a tad unfair to Cormier, but the facts remain that he lost to the 2 arguable greatest of all times in their respective divisions twice each. Their trilogy fight at UFC 252 in August 2020 just confirmed what had become apparent, that Cormier was a great fighter despite his physical disadvantages, but would never be the absolute greatest because of them. So how good was Daniel Cormier actually? Let's get a few things straight before we answer that question. Daniel Cormier is absolutely one of the best fighters to do it. He's a gentleman inside and outside of the ring. The respect he gives and receives from fellow fighters is testament to Cormier the fighter and Cormier the man. In fighting terms, Cormier is almost without peer. He beat the best of the best in 2 major MMA promotions in 2 different weight divisions. Despite being primarily a wrestler, he showed remarkable hand speed for a supposedly chubby guy, and all of this at a considerable height and reach disadvantage for most of his career. For a man who was probably no one's idea of an Adonis, he cleared out 2 divisions. Almost. That almost is the asterisk that Cormier's name must bear next to it in perpetuity. Ultimately, despite all his achievements, Cormier came up short when it came to the very upper echelon of MMA, the greatest of all time conversation. The answer to the question of how good Cormier was is that he was the best fighter there was at light heavyweight, definitely, and heavyweight, arguably, whose name wasn't Jones or Miocic. There is no shame in that.